Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a princess named Snow White. Everyone knew her as a gentle, beautiful girl who was always smiling. Her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as roses, and her hair as black as the night. But no one truly knew what was hidden inside her heart. She lived with her stepmother, the queen. Unlike the rumors spread throughout the castle, the queen was not truly a cruel woman. She was strict and cold, but she ruled the kingdom with discipline and great sacrifice after Snow White's father fell ill. Inside a secret chamber of the castle, the queen possessed a magical mirror. Mirror, mirror on the wall, she asked one night. Who is the most dangerous person in this kingdom? The mirror shimmered softly and replied, Snow White, the Queen Frost. Impossible, she whispered. Behind her innocent face, replied the mirror, grows a heart filled with envy and ambition.
Since childhood, Snow White had lived surrounded by praise. Everyone admired her beauty, and slowly she began to believe that the entire kingdom should belong to her. She hated the queen because the people respected the queen more than they respected her. One day, Snow White murmured while staring at the royal throne, "All of this be mine." Several servants began to disappear. Some royal guards were secretly poisoned. Snow White manipulated many people with her sweet and gentle behavior. Then blamed everything on the queen. The people began to whisper, "The queen is becoming crueler. Poor Snow White." Meanwhile, the queen started to realize something horrifying. "I was too late to see who she really is," she sighed quietly.
At last, the queen summoned the royal huntsman. Take Snow White into the forest. Keep her far away from the castle before more victims fall. The huntsman looked shocked. Your Majesty, is the princess truly that dangerous? The queen stared at him sharply. Though sadness filled her eyes. I do not want to hurt her, but the kingdom must be protected. The huntsman brought Snow White into the forest, but during the journey, Snow White realized everything. So, the queen wants to kill me? The huntsman shivered nervously. I was only ordered to keep you away from the castle. Snow White slowly stepped closer. Then, tell everyone that the queen tried to murder me. The huntsman's eyes widened. What? Before he could react, Snow White stabbed his arm with a small dagger and ran away screaming, Help! The queen is trying to kill me! From that day on, the queen became even more hated by the people.
Deep in forest, Snow White discovered the cottage of the seven dwarfs. She pretended to be a frightened and helpless girl. How pitiful, said Jolly. You may stay here, advised. Snow White smiled sweetly. Thank you, you are all so kind. But slowly, the atmosphere inside the cottage began to change. The dwarfs started arguing with one another. Secretly, Snow White manipulated them against each other. Grumble said, You are lazy. Wise thinks he is always right. Jolly laughed at all of you behind your backs. Soon they began to distrust one another. One night, Wise caught Snow White smiling while watching the chaos he had created. You did this on purpose, Wise said quickly. Snow White looked at him without a trace of guilt. I'm only showing them who they truly are. Wise began to realize that perhaps the queen had been telling the truth all along. Meanwhile, the queen once again asked the mirror, what is Snow White doing now? The mirror replied, she is waiting for the right moment to return and seize the kingdom. The queen closed her eyes. I must stop her. Using magic, the queen disguised herself as an old woman and traveled to the cottage. But this time, she did not come to kill Snow White. She carried an apple enchanted with a sleeping spell, the only way to bring Snow White back without hurting anyone. When she arrived at the cottage, Snow White immediately recognized the queen's eyes. You? She whispered with a sinister smile. The old woman held out the apple. Eat this, and all of this will end. Snow White laughed softly. No, this is only the beginning. Yet she still took a bite of the apple. Her body slowly collapsed onto the floor. The dwarf returned home and panicked when they saw her lying unconscious. What happened? Shouted Jolly. Why stared at the apple with trembling hands. The queen came here. Immediately, the dwarf fairy turned toward the queen. They placed Snow White inside a glass cabin and swore revenge.
The news spread throughout the kingdom. The queen poisoned Snow White! The queen poisoned Snow White! The people were furious. The place was stormed. The queen did not fight back. She stood alone in the grand hall as the crowd shouted at her with hatred. Her father was once a good king, one citizen yelled. But you destroyed his family. The queen only replied softly, I was trying to protect you. No one believed her. Not long afterward, a prince arrived after hearing Snow White's story. He opened the glass coffin and gently kissed her hand. Snow White's eyes slowly opened, but the smile that appeared on her face was not one of kindness. It was a smile of victory. Now, she whispered quietly, there is no one left who can stand in my way. Wise, who witnessed, feel a child of horror. We made a mistake. Snow White returned to the place as the survivor. The people welcomed her back with tears of relief and joy. Meanwhile, the queen was sentenced to death. One day of the execution, heavy rain poured from the sky. Snow White stood on the palace balcony, dancing in along with gold. The queen looked at her one last time. I still consider of my daughter, she said softly. She waited merely gave a cool smile. And that is your great weakness. These words fell. The dwarf lowered their hands in deep regret. At least they realized that all along it had helped a monster enter the kingdom.
Snow White returned to the castle as the surviving victim. The people welcomed her with tears of joy. Meanwhile, the queen was sentenced to death. On the day of execution, heavy rain poured from the sky. Snow White stood on the palace balcony, wearing a long white gown. The queen looked at her one last time. I still consider you my daughter, she said weakly. Snow White only smiled coldly. And that was your greatest weakness. The plate fell. The dwarfs lowered their heads in regret. At last, they realized they had helped a monster enter the kingdom. Several years later, the kingdom became a land filled with fear. Anyone who opposed Snow White disappeared without a trace. Inside the castle, the magical mirror slowly cracked as it whispered, "The greatest evil is not a terrifying face, but a heart capable of pretending to be pure."